Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. As I always say, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you guys so much for all of the support, the messages, and all of the great things that you've sent the show's way. Truly appreciate it. Truly appreciate each and every one of you as listeners, and we're going to jump right into it. As you know by the title of this episode, Two Free Zone, a really interesting topic to always talk about because I know you as listeners have a lot of familiarity with it, and I always think it's fun to talk to a guest who is passionate about this and can talk about their experiences about maximizing it, getting the most out of it, how to make it work at a high level, which my guest will talk about, and all the little intricacies, maybe all those little minute details or those little things that can go into really making a two-free zone something effective and something that you can throw against a team and have a lot of success at. So that's what we're going to jump into right now. We're going to get into, like I said, the concept of maximizing the two-free zone. And to do that, of course, I'm not alone. I'm very happy to be joined by assistant coach out at Elmira High School, Coach Luke Palmer, joining us here today. Coach, again, appreciate you being able to come on here and talk to us today. How you doing?
Coach Hernandez, thank you. Pleasure to be on this amazing podcast and appreciate the opportunity to, speak to some of us here tonight. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Coach, let's start with you and your basketball and your coaching journey. This great game of basketball, a lot of twists and turns that everybody goes on their coaching journey. Tell us about yours and ultimately how you ended up at Elmira.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Luke Palmer. I'm thrilled to share my coaching journey with all of you. My path has kind of been shaped by my community and my family's enduring passion for the game of basketball, I'd say. I grew up in Elmira, New York, born and raised, and I've absorbed this sport from a young age, particularly through my dad's basketball tournament, the Josh Palmer Fund, Elmira Holiday Basketball Tournament, right after Christmas. This event is a cornerstone of our community and one of the better basketball tournaments, I'd say, in New York State for high school. For the past 25 years, this basketball tournament's been going on, and it showcases the excitement of basketball not only, but it also serves as a critical mission, which is supporting local cancer patients on top of doing that. So great tournament with great teams from across the Mid-Atlantic region and supports local cancer patients. So it was here that I learned that the value of giving back while nurturing my love for the game was really vital, and I wanted to get involved. And, over the years, I always had passion and loved the game, and here I do find myself fresh out of high school, graduated from Elmira High School last year. Had the honor of serving as director of basketball operations for our varsity program last year. Now I'm joining the coaching staff this year. This is my second year in the program. My first year, obviously, on the coaching staff. I was actually school board approved this past week. It's a pivotal moment in my journey. I came to Elmira back to the program when we got a new head coach last year who's become a mentor to me. His name's Toby Foster. He's a distinguished coach with a very impressive track record. One of the Section 4 all-time leading scorers in the history of Section 4, and the best shooter in Section 4 history, in my opinion. He also leads the all-time three-point scoring record at Canisius University. So he went on to play at the Division I level, starting in a small town, working his way up at Candor High School, then going on to play at the Division I level at Canisius University. His commitment to developing the game both on and off the court have deeply inspired me, and I'm eagerly accepted his invitation to return to the coaching staff this season fresh out of high school. So it was a very honor for that opportunity. He's been a great friend and mentor to me, and I'm forever grateful for him. So last season was especially memorable for our program. We captured the Section 4 class AAA championship, defeating a very strong Corning Paint and Post team, led by an exceptional coach and a good friend of ours, family and my family, and Coach Mike Johnston, one of the coach in New York State history, in my opinion, and certainly one of the best coach in Section 4 history, if not the best coach of all time in Section 4 history. This victory was not just about the title, but it was a culmination of our players' dedication, resilience, and teamwork. I was particularly proud of how we came together as a unit, overcoming some obstacles from that season and fostering a culture of trust and hard work by the end of it. After sectionals, we ended up going down to Torrance City, played Mount Vernon in the first round of the state tournament. Played in a competitive game with them until the second half. Started to full court press us a little bit, and then some things don't go our way, but that's basketball, that's life, things happen, and you move on. But certainly had a very good season, and we look to build upon that this upcoming season. So looking ahead, though, I'm incredibly excited about this talented group of players this year returning this season. They embody determination and resilience, and their sights are not only set on winning another sectional championship, but also making a significant run to the state tournament, like I said. My goal is to contribute to their growth and ensuring that they both develop as athletes and as individuals, students as well, students first before they're athletes, and, making better men out of them by the end of it. So, again, thanks for this opportunity to share my journey with your podcast. It's a fantastic podcast, first class podcast for sure, Mike, and I'm eager to engage in this conversation.
I have to ask, Coach, as I was hearing about your story and your experience, I'm sure people listening are curious as well. How is it being a coach when your age is so close to some of the players that you work with? Is that something that presented any challenges to you? Was that anything that you had to overcome? Was it something that you didn't think about? Talk about what that's like being a coach that's so close in age with some of the players that you're working with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's even closer because I graduated a year early. I actually doubled up. So,
oh, wow.
No, it absolutely is. I've always been told I have an old soul for my age, but it 100% is. And at times there are some challenges with it, looking at me as, kind of a higher up to them, but you got to build trust with your players, right? You got to build, a level of trust and comfortability, and, you got to be on the same page with them, and trust, you got to build that over time. And you got to be on the same page, like I said, and it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and you got to earn their trust and their level to respect you, and you got to earn that respect. So it certainly didn't happen overnight. I have a certain role. I don't overstep myself, certainly, and that's why I'm an assistant and not a head coach at this age. But I am currently the youngest coach in New York State. After this week of getting approved by the school board. But yeah, no, certainly a level of trust you got to build with them, and respect, because if they don't respect you, then nothing's going to get accomplished during your time. So 100%.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as you mentioned about your role as an assistant coach, let's talk about that a little bit, because it's so fascinating how not only do head coaches all have different visions and they have different success criteria and job criteria for what it is that they're trying to accomplish. But of course, as we know, the assistant coach role can vary very widely from staff to staff, program to program. You'll obviously see some very involved assistant coaches, some assistant coaches not as much. There's a whole wide array of what assistant coaches do. So I wanted you to talk about where is your role as an assistant coach? How are you defining success in your job, and how do you and your head coach kind of work together all to kind of accomplish the same goal and vision?
Yeah, no, great, insightful question. And, that's what's great about my role is, we have two other great assistants, and Tony Clearwater, who is another standout college basketball player, and a great community member and great friend of ours, and James Harris, who's been with the program for many years, and his son's one of our better players, and if not our best player this year. A great point guard and shooting guard who shoot the lights out of the ball this year. So it's really good having them both on the staff, and it kind of levels me out too at times where I don't have to do as much, and, not do as much, but, I can be more kind of laid back and not, up into the players as, that level of, similar age, right? Level of respect and trust, and I don't have to overlap myself, right? So no, it's really good having those two there. And I believe that success as an assistant coach is not solely defined by wins and losses, though, but rather by the impact that you have on your players and the overall team culture. My philosophy always has been it revolves around consistently striving to give my best effort regardless of the outcomes on the scoreboard. It could be 70-0, it could be 76 to 74. It doesn't matter. Got to give your best effort regardless of the outcome. Your effort doesn't change regardless of the outcome. Success is subjective, right? It varies
Yeah.
from the team to
Sure.
Yep. Varies from team to team and player to player. For some programs, achieving a 500 record may signify success after a challenging season. Well, for others, the expectation is to compete for a championship, right? So in my role, I define success by how well I can support our head coach, foster our player development, and contribute to a positive and cohesive team environment. I take inspiration from Coach Mike Krzyzewski, actually, who emphasizes that excellence comes from doing your very best and personally defining what success looks like for you. So to maximize the potential of assistants, I believe head coaches must communicate their vision and goals clearly, which Coach Foster at Elmira does magnificently, and also by empowering us to set and pursue our own objectives within that framework. We create a collaborative atmosphere where everyone feels valued, right? You got to do that. You got to have your coaching staff and your players all on the same page, one unit as one, all working on the same page at the same time. So you got to have an environment and atmosphere where everybody feels valued and no one's left out. So when I feel supported and I know that my contributions matter, it fuels my motivation to excel in my role. So this collaborative approach that enhances our effectiveness and fosters a strong dynamic team, which is also essential for achieving collective success, ultimately is about the relentless pursuit of excellence, not just in terms of wins and losses, but in efforts, relationships, personal growth as both coaches and players.
Yeah, I love that idea that you mentioned in particular about, giving a voice. And I think that especially for you as you're kind of really jumping into this role and getting going in your coaching career, to feel that you are empowered, that you have the ability to, help out with decisions, that your input is valued, that when you speak, you're treated, just like any other coach would, I imagine has to be just really impactful and really powerful for you, because you're really getting to grow in this coaching profession and really get a lot of meaningful experience, not just, with, in an assistant role, but, your voice is being heard, your input's being heard, you're seeing how things are done at a program-wide level. You're getting kind of the peek through the curtain, so to speak, from the head coach, because you're working in sync with them. And I think that's really cool, all the different types of experience that you're getting.
Absolutely.
Coach, I wanted to shift over and talk about this topic, 2-free zone. It's really interesting to me to hear it, because I know it's a malign term sometimes, and people sometimes, roll their eyes at a 2-free zone. They think that it's, there's a whole bunch that is said about a 2-free zone, and I think I think some of it, depending especially at what level that you're running a 2-free zone, could certainly be valid. But I'm really curious about when players come into your program. 2-free zone is, I'm sure, something that they have familiarity with. If you tell them to get into a 2-free, they could get into it. But when it comes to running the 2-free zone correctly, what are things that they know? What are some things that they might not know? Talk us through kind of their understanding of a 2-free zone when they're coming into the program.
Yes, great question. So when our players first join our program, many come in with the basic understanding of the 2-3 zone structure, like you said. They grasp that it involves 3 players at the top and then 2 at the bottom. However, they often lack a comprehensive understanding of the nuisances that make the defense, so truly effective. So to address this, we focus on reteaching essential principles, back to the basics. For example, when they might understand positioning, they often struggle with the concept of constant movement in response to ball movement. We emphasize that each player's role is dynamic. They must react to the ball and communicate effectively with their teammates. We also emphasize the importance of recovering quickly after mistakes. In practice, we stimulate situations where players overcommit to a shooter or a drive, and we drill them on how to recover and reposition effectively. So, additionally, we teach situational adjustments, such as how to defend against baseline drives or effectively trap in the high post and short corner. So by installing a deeper understanding that the 2-3 zone is not just about positioning, but about teamwork and, being fluid, we create a more cohesive defensive unit, right? I'm all about being a unit. So working as one, the fist to 5, working as one unit on the court. So this understanding empowers our players to make smarter decisions on the court, leading to more effective execution during games.
So from your answer, kind of what I get out of that is they kind of understand maybe the obviously the formation of it and maybe some of the basic movements that go with it, but there are like some of the nuances about, you know, the outcomes that you're trying to get, about trapping, about certain tweaks or specific sort of actions that you're looking for out of it. Is it implementing those pieces that you find are the things that you're really working on?
Yes, we're about installing a deeper understanding and to the 2-3 zone. That's not just about position, right? It's about, you know, working together as one, a cohesive defensive unit, like the fist of five working as one. So we'll go into, you know, like I said, situational adjustments, you know, baseline drives, how to defend that, simple stuff, you know, back to the basic stuff. You know, everybody can do, you know, set up into a 2-3 zone, you know, 2 at the top, 3 at the bottom, but, you know, they lack, again, a comprehensive understanding of how the nuisances that make the defense so truly effective, how that works.
Yeah, I like that. You've mentioned that a couple times, that like that fist of five concept. Is that kind of like that idea that all five players are kind of working as one, almost like on a string where it's almost like one mind for five players sort of thing?
Spot on.
No, that's awesome. No, I love that. Talk about then what goes into practices, you know, working on defense or working on a zone in general. What is it that you and your program are doing to kind of work on all of the details and the refinement and some of those actions and working on defensive principles in practice?
Yeah, so in practice, we employ a diverse array of drills to refine our 2-3 zone defense. So one of our foundational drills is our perimeter movement drill, where our offensive players pass the ball around the perimeter while our defensive team shifts accordingly, because, you know, everybody's moving into, everybody's shifting. The drill reinforces the principles of constant movement and teaches defenders to read the offense, anticipate passes, don't over-anticipate, but anticipate it, know it's coming, be ready for it, and react accordingly. So we also implement specific trapping drills where we position offensive players in corners and practice initiating and executing traps effectively. This helps our players recognize when to apply pressure and, you know, how to communicate during double team situations. So by simulating and, you know, situating these game-like scenarios, we prepare them to respond, you know, insignificantly during actual games. Rebounding drills are essential as well that we do. We simulate game situations where players must box out because boxing out wins games, and they must quickly recover the ball after a shot. This not only reinforces our defensive principles, but it also helps develop the tendency that is needed to secure rebounds. Got to rebound. Additionally, we practice navigating screens, ensuring defenders must understand how to switch and maintain their positioning without losing defensive integrity. So, you know, all of these drills come together to create a comprehensive understanding of the 2-3 zone. So ensuring our players are well prepared to execute effectively in game situations. That's what practice is all about, you know, preparing guys and making guys understand what it's like for in game situations. So they're prepared, you know, it's leading up to the game.
So one of the things I wanted to pick your brain about in one of your answers, because I think that it's great that you mentioned it, and I really like that as well about in your defensive principles and things that you're working on, is trapping. And I think that it's such an effective tool, and you know this too. It's so effective when done right, but you've seen it, I've seen it, everybody listening has seen traps that aren't correct. They're sloppy, the timing isn't there, they're fouling's taking place, you know, they split it. There's a whole bunch that I've seen unfortunately go wrong for as many times as I've seen it go right. So I'm curious about what you and your coaching staff kind of emphasize on the traps. I guess in other words, what goes into really making sure that a defensive trap is effective and done the correct way?
Yeah, so, you know, obviously, yes, you know, we have seen that. You know, we really emphasize, I would want to say 5 to 6 things. Positioning, right? Making sure our guards are positioned at the top of the key where the with the three players, forward and center spread out, along the baseline and wings. Two is anticipation, right? The guard should anticipate the ball handler's moves and be ready to close in quickly. The key is to trap as soon as the ball crosses half court, right? Or when the ball handler dribbles into the corner. That's the goal, when to trap. So anticipation. Communicating. Communication is key. Offense, defense doesn't matter. Players must call out everything, screens, switches, traps, everything. That's offense and defense, but I know you're talking about traps. But communication, Everybody must be on the same page, right? Aggressive trapping, right? That's a big one. I know we're talking about trapping again, but when we trap aggressively. We get into guys. We cut off passing lanes. We force turnovers. We get into guys. We rotate well, right? We quickly recover potential passing options. We center ourselves to be ready to protect the basket. We cover the nearest open player. Simple stuff like that, rotation. And then our hands up, number 6. So keeping our hands up to block the passing lanes, and we want to make it as difficult as possible for the ball handler to see open teammates. Shut it down. So that's how we effectively trap, or try to, at least.
Well, I think that it's really cool that, as I'm thinking back to if I was like, back in high school and if I was playing, like, to have things the way that you kind of mentioned, almost in like a bullet point or like a list format of like, hey, these are like the certain keys for, what we do on a trap, or here's our certain, 4 or 5 key points in this situation or key points in this situation. I imagine that must make it kind of pretty easy for players to understand and kind of understand what it is they need to know. It's like it's being communicated to them in a way where you're communicating all the important information that they need to do in order to run something correctly, but it's not overly explained or overcomplicated. Right. It kind of gets like right to the point to where they can understand it and put it into action right away.
Absolutely. It's simple. Don't make it like 10, key points. Keep it to 5 or 6, it's 6 at top probably,
Yeah.
And just roll with it and set the standard from the beginning, right? The standard's the standard for your program. It doesn't matter, what happens throughout the season. Your standard, and hold your players, your staff, and your entire program to that standard, and understand the standard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
No, yeah, no, if you're gonna say the standard's the standard, that applies to everybody, coaches and players included, right?
Absolutely.
You mentioned rebounding, and so I would be remiss if I did not pick your brain about this. You talked about some of the principles that go into rebounding, but I'm curious for your program and your coaching staff's philosophy. Is rebounding, how much of it is skill based and how much of it would you say is will based, the idea of just wanting to get the ball? How much needs to be spent on maybe the technique portion, or how much is it like guys just want to have to get it and they need to go out and hunt the ball and go get it and make a play on the boards?
In my opinion, rebounding is all about how much a guy wants it. One of our top rebounders last year was one of our smaller guys, a guard actually, one of our 6th man off the bench. Went in, got us, I'd say, at least 6 to 7 rebounds a game. Got in there, was physical and was aggressive, and went to work inside. So that's all about how much you want it. Doesn't matter how tall or small you are. It's about the will to get in there and get after it and cause some damage, in my opinion.
Well, no, I agree. I think that there are techniques. I think there are definitely principles and things to think about. But when you have a player who just wants the ball, like I'm thinking of my team right now, I'm on the girls' side, but still, 5'4" is pretty short on the girls' side. But I have a girl who's 5'4", and she by far gets the most rebounds, because if she is out there in the paint and she's gets a hold of it, it's either going to be a jump ball or it's going to be her ball. Like, she hunts for basketballs. And I think that, like, to have a player with that mentality, I think the other team knows, like, oh man, like, this player's getting after the ball. Maybe I don't want it as badly as they do. Maybe I'm not going to go as aggressive as they are, because I don't want to get into a a physical like tug of war with this player. And I think that sort of stuff matters when you have a team where everybody wants the ball and the other team notices that can make us almost like a psychological difference when they know, oh man, this team is getting after the rebounds. They really want the ball aggressively.
Yeah, I bet that girl wants it more than anybody on your team.
Oh yeah. If you saw her play, yeah, she's always on the ground. She's always fighting for balls. No, for sure. Coach,
Love it.
we talked about communication, and of course, it sounds like something that is an obvious need for any defense to be successful, because it is. But of course, our players typically are never communicating to the level or to the extent that we wish they were. And I know that you mentioned communication as one of your principles. So let's talk about improving defensive communication in a two-free zone. What needs to be communicated, and how do you and your staff make sure that your team is communicating the right way?
Yes, communication is absolutely vital for a successful defense, offense. It doesn't matter. If you want to win basketball games, communication's key, bottom line. So especially in a 2-3 zone, right?
Mhm.
We establish specific verbal cues to enhance our defensive cohesion. For instance, players call out bump when switching assignments, which keeps everyone aware of each other's actions and responsibilities during a fast-paced game situation. To foster a culture of communication, we integrate into every single drill communicating. It encourages players to vocalize their actions, calling out screens, repositioning, and identifying traps. This not only creates a habit of talking, but it also ensures that everyone remains on the same page throughout the game. Off the court, we engage in team. Hold on 1 second.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we identify traps. This practice not only, creates a habit of talking, but also ensures that everyone remains on the same page throughout the game. Off the court, we engage in team building activities that enhance trust among players. This trust facilitates better communication on the court. Additionally, I make it a point to pause during practices to discuss communication strategies and provide feedback, reinforcing the message that their voices matter and maintaining our defensive structures is certainly crucial. And by promoting open dialogue, we cultivate a strong defensive unit that can adapt and respond effectively to the challenge presented by any opposing team.
So when players come into the program, how would you kind of assess their communication level? How much do they need to be taught and caught up to speed to the level of communication that's needed for them to be successful? Or is there a lot that they need to know? Is it a little that they need to know? How would you say their baseline knowledge of defensive communication is by the time they come to Elvira?
Yeah, no, I'd like to keep it simple, right? If you want to play, in our program, you better be able to communicate and call things out, in practice and in a game. Plain and simple.
Mm. Yeah, and so you said the word bump. Is there other terminology that kind of goes into things that that your team's communicating?
Yeah, bump, switch, just little cues like that, words, it's all about terminology, right? It's no different from in football, strong right, strong left, call outs like that. Bump just happens to be a word that we use.
Nice. So I'm curious about, I should have asked this before, but now I cycled back to this question. How much in your practices do you say is kind of spent working on defensive principles and working on defense? Is there a heavy emphasis on each practice? Does it change depending on where you are in the season? How is the time allocated, I guess, spent working on defense? How does that kind of work with each practice?
Yeah, it depends. We do offensive and then defensive days, and then some days we split it. But defense certainly, we believe that defense certainly wins championships. And if you can't play defense, then you're not going to win. So, yeah, no, we definitely put a big emphasis on playing strong, vocal, and sound fundamental defense.
Something that I am curious about too, and this is something that pops into my head about um on your defense. I think that there is maybe a misconception out there about a two-free zone, that it's, I don't know if people would say it's like a lazy defense or kind of a soft defense that you can kind of go through the motions and like go into. But obviously, as you've mentioned in your answer, defensive intensity and the way that you play defense is very, very important. So is that's something that you had to kind of teach to your guys that, hey, this is not just falling into a two free zone and you're just kind of going through the motions. Like, this is a trapping defense, this is an aggressive defense, we're still coming at you, sort of thing. Is there kind of like a switch almost that you kind of had to kind of turn on or kind of instruct to your guys about, hey, this is a two free zone, but this isn't like a lazy two free zone, so to speak?
Yeah, no, we know going into it in our program that, anybody who says the 2-3 zone is a lazy defense obviously doesn't know a lot about a 2-3 zone, because in our 2-3 zone, everybody's moving. Whenever the ball moves, everyone's moving, all five guys. So nobody's standing still. So I wouldn't call that, lazy at all. And then, yeah, we pressure guys, we trap, we do certain things out of it, we call things out. So it's in a very aggressive defense, I'd say.
When just actually, this will go back to my next question here, so I'll follow up after I ask this. So, two free, like I mentioned, a lot of familiarity with it. Coaches know exactly what a two free zone is about formation wise, and probably some of the you know looks that a defense is trying to force out of a two free zone. So I'm curious about what are other teams trying to run against a two free, and what are they looking to try and potentially take advantage of? And then as a coaching staff, how do you then in turn have counters for what it is that they're trying to put?
Yeah, no, teams often target, weaknesses in the 2-3 zone. They rely on the perimeter shooting or quick ball movement to create openings. They might exploit the high post or short corner. They look for gaps where our defense may be vulnerable, and they recognize these tendencies, which is crucial to our preparation, certainly. So to counter these strategies, we emphasize closing out hard and on our shooters. Our defenders practice how to contest shots effectively while maintaining their positioning. And if we identify specific our offensive set, we can trigger automatic traps in the high post. So applying pressure and forcing the offense into difficult situations, certainly. So encouraging quick and effective communication is key. Obviously, communication is key. And our defenders need to adjust to the offense dynamically, calling out screens and switching to maintain our defense integrity. By practicing situational awareness and decisiveness in our drills, we mitigate the offensive team's advantage and ensure their effectiveness of our 2-3 zone that remains intact.
Yeah, as you were saying, the biggest thing that I was thinking of on that is like, okay, there's definitely high post, right? Looking to get to the middle, looking to go high post, looking to go low post, trying to get the ball in the middle inside. And so that's something that you're really, I'm sure, well aware of. And so you kind of mentioned about doubling. It has to be, I'm sure, one of those points of emphasis where either we don't let the ball get in this situation, or if it does, it's like an automatic trap, automatic double. There's something that automatically happens when balls are in certain when the ball is in a certain like danger zone, so to speak.
Yep, bump, 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 trap, 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 switch, switch. We're always doing something. We're always moving. We're always talking and communicating in our zone. It's not lazy.
What percentage, if at all, I'm curious, are you ever are you and the coaching staff, are you ever running any kind of like zone press that goes into a two free zone? Are you consistently playing at a half court in a two free zone? What's kind of the how does the two free zone kind of work in the overall like scheme of what's happening defensively?
Yeah, no, it depends on the situation in the game, right? Late game, need a couple turnovers, 10-point game, you're going to be upping guys, right? Get a couple turnovers, maybe get a couple quick pointers and, simple stuff like that. But, for the most part, especially early on, we're half coordinate, we're in it, we're vocal and we're communicating and, staying, what makes us good, staying with our fundamentals.
You mentioned also, and as I'm just thinking about things that I know that teams are going to do, right? You mentioned about how teams are going to probably, I imagine you face situations where teams will try and shoot out of this zone, right? They're going to try and look for a way to kind of hit shots from the outside and try and extend the zone that way. Out of curiosity, is there a point where you just kind of not let a team shoot? Obviously, you're contesting things hard, but where you sort of just kind of live with certain things where, hey, you know, there's going to be some shots like gonna go up and they're going to maybe make a few and that's fine? Is there a point where you think where, you know, they're shooting too many outside shots or getting too many good looks on the outside, and then it becomes
Yeah.
becomes an issue? I'm just kind of curious about kind of how that balance kind of works for your coaching staff, where you kind of say, hey, like they're getting some outside shots up, but we're still doing fine defensively, versus no, they're getting defensive shots up, but now this is becoming a problem for us.
Yeah, no, we're never going to give them anything easy, right? No, we're never going to take anything for granted and, just give it to them. But, on certain nights when a guy's feeling it and, we're going to make them make that shot from the perimeter. But, when a guy's having it, and having a good night, we'll tip our cap and, give it to him. When a guy's having a good night and feeling it, sometimes you just got to tip your cap,
Yeah, yeah, and well, that's, I mean, that's a good
Everybody
point.
has those nights.
Everyone does. And I think, you know, you as a coach, and anybody who's listening as a coach, you kind of understand that there's going to be no defense is perfect. You know, defense can be run really well, but every defense potentially can give up something. And if you are giving up, you know, outside shots, I guess you have to think about like who's your personnel in those situations. That kind of goes back to scouting. Who are you giving up those open shots to, or not, hopefully not open, those contested shots, but who's getting those contested shots, and is it the right person in the scouting report, or is it the, you know, person who's shooting 40-45% from three that you're giving those shots up to? And I imagine that, you know, who the person is that's shooting can kind of make a difference as to whether or not you're executing the game plan right, versus, like you said, kind of tipping your cap to maybe somebody who is kind of shooting out of nowhere, so to speak.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You game plan for the guy shooting 45% from the field, but if the other guy, who you don't really, know a ton about, has a good night,
Hmm.
which we had a situation like that in our sectional championship. We had a guy come off our bench and shot really well from the perimeter that night at our place in the sectional championship, and they just didn't have a game plan for him. Found the 3-point range really well, and they just couldn't find. They gave it up. They tipped their
Yeah,
cap and
yeah.
said, you know what, he's having a good night. We're going to make him make those shots. And if they make those shots, then congratulations.
Hey, it's always nice when it's one of your players who's surprising people in that way, right?
Oh, 100%.
Makes me think of some follow-up questions here, Coach. What is the level of scouting and preparation and that goes into each opponent? I know that it sounds like you're very confident in the zone, and it's something that you and your coaching staff are very have a lot of belief that it's going to work, which obviously you should. But how much preparation kind of goes into working on your defense while also kind of preparing for the team that you're about to play and maybe some of their offense that they're going to run or some of their skill players? What kind of goes into, you know, kind of incorporating what you're learning from scouting and game planning into, you know, how you're practicing on defense?
Yeah, no, we game plan and scout the staff really hard. And, we put an emphasis on knowing what our opponent's going to do and, fatigues and, pros and cons to each team and, knowing each player. And, our head coach likes to know what, the opposing players start, eat for breakfast that day.
Yeah.
He's deep into it, and I love that. And, yeah, no, but sometimes basketball's all about, all about balance. And you got to balance it out at times, right? You got to focus on offense and defense and, doing some individual stuff. So, you got to balance it all out.
What is your role as an assistant coach? What role do you play in terms of the scouting and game planning? What is your expectation for that?
Yeah, so our head coach does a lot of the scouting. I'll review film with him occasionally, from time to time. But he loves to look at film. He's a film junkie. Loves every second of it. And I review the scouting report once he's done with it. Us as a staff look over it, and then we send it to our players after we review it and all agree with it.
No, that's nice, and I like that. It seems to be like there's input that's wanted from everybody, right? It's kind of like a almost like a communal effort where like this scouting report is like everybody kind of gets to look at it, everyone kind of get asked questions. Like everybody leaves, I imagine, whatever that meeting is, knowing exactly what the plan is and what the report is, and like everybody's on the same page, sort of thing.
Yes, everybody knows their role.
Are you doing a lot of charting of defensive stats? Are there ways where you can look at certain stats or certain, percentages or numbers or whatever the case may be and kind of be able to tell like, okay, we had a good defensive night. We can look at these numbers and know that. Is there any sort of like stat keeping on those sort of things
Yeah.
that has taken place?
Yes, with luckily and fortunate for us, our district has huddle. So we break down huddle, our huddle cameras and film. After every game, the huddle system breaks down everything for us after every game. So we're very fortunate to have that system. That technology does it for us, and we can look at it and review it and go over it and communicate it to our players and look at it and you know go over what went right and what went wrong and then build from it.
What are those conversations like with your players? Is it kind of looking at the film? Is it looking at the stats? I'm always curious about how, because I'm always looking personally, honestly, to always improve in this area about helping players understand from the previous game, whether it's using film, using stats. So what do you and your coaching staff like to do in terms of those conversations to really help your guys understand what went right and maybe what didn't go as right the last game?
Yeah, I know. I'm personally, in my opinion, I'm big about looking at film and looking at guys doing it because, looking at numbers is one thing. Numbers are
Hmm.
numbers, but then seeing them do it, seeing it is believing it, in my opinion. Seeing, a player doing it makes them believe they can do it, right? I can sit down and give a kid a bunch of numbers and, go over it with them, but if I put it on video in front of them and they see themselves doing it, they're going to be more confident out of that, conversation.
So are those like long film sessions that you're having? Like, is it something where you can keep a guy's attention for a long time, or how long do those like film discussions kind of take place, or do they vary kind of from player to player?
It varies from player to player, right? Because every player has their own tendencies and pros and cons, but you got to keep it short and simple at the age they're at in high school, right? The longer you go, the more you're going to lose them.
The more you
So
lose
you got
them.
to keep it short.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, the more you lose them for sure. Uh, you mentioned when it circling back to a couple other things about things that you're teaching and kind of emphasizing is one of the things that you have to spend a lot of time working on is proper technique with like footwork and closing out. There's such simple things in a sense, but everybody kind of has their own little twist on what they want to see on a closeout, how they want to see, footwork look like in terms of keeping your person in front of you or playing on the ball, so to speak. So are there particular points that you're kind of emphasizing in terms of those things that try to make it that much better to your guys?
Yeah, no, we hope by the time that they, get up to the varsity level that they have those simple things like footwork and, again, communicating and, the simple fundamentals of basketball down and ready to go. So by the time they get up to us, they're ready to go. So from the modified level learning and then continuing to grow at the JV level, maybe winning a couple games, when you get up to JV, it's still about developing, but maybe winning a couple games at modified, it's all about developing. But by the time they get up to us, that they're ready to go and ready to, get after it. We were fortunate to have a really good feeder program, especially a really
Hmm.
good JV coach, Nick Morrissey, who's a really, really good JV coach, knows the game very, very well. So we've been very, very fortunate to have a good group of building up, and so by the time they're ready for varsity, they're ready to go.
And I think that speaks to something that is really really important is how your coaching staff is all like to use a teaching term, I guess, like vertically aligned. So there's kind of almost this building block process of teaching defense at the younger levels by the time they work their way up to varsity. So I'll let you speak to this, but I imagine that everyone's working on a 2-3 zone and everyone's working on defensive principles and kind of building it up kind of brick by brick. And then by the time that they get to the varsity level, they've had exposure to the terminology. They understand, what it's supposed to look like on a fundamental level. It seems like there's kind of this building block process that kind of moves up from one level to the next.
Yeah, you got to build it from the youth level up, Mike. You start from the bottom and work your way up. And you got to have everybody on the same page, right? Everybody has to feel included and working together as one that fits the five, like I talk about. And yeah, you can't have your modified JV teams running, you know, a man to man when your varsity is running a 2-3 zone. You got to be running, the same defense on the same page. or else those guys modified JV aren't going to be ready when, it's time to step up to varsity.
And so it makes me kind of think about as a coach, right? As I kind of like reflect about, your guys, as a varsity coach or, whatever the case may be, where it is that your players need to get to ultimately, whatever it is that you run on offense or defense. So what is it that you're doing to kind of build them up to that level? Like what do they absolutely have to know at the JV level? What do they absolutely have to know at the freshman level? But maybe not necessarily giving them everything because there's things you're going to tweak or you're going to kind of refine. But I think it's kind of important, or maybe definitely important rather, to kind of have that like success criteria of what is it that they have to know, what is it that they have to get down and do by their freshman year or by their JV level. And I think to actually have that mapped out so if your guys are like hitting the benchmarks so that they are ready to play varsity, that seems to me really important. And I don't think you want to make it like a guessing game where you don't know like whether or not the JV team is ready or whether the freshman team is ready. I think it's really helpful to kind of have that defined success criteria, which it kind of sounds like you guys have over there.
Yeah, you got to build up over time, and you unlock levels at every level you go up, right? You don't give them everything at once, but when you master, the level you start off with, then you get a little bit more. You got to continue to build upon your successes and then your failures too.
I'm curious, Coach, about a few more questions here before we hit our concluding segment. Talk about what is your role in a practice. I think coaches are always looking to make sure that their assistants are always active, they're vocal, they have a voice, and they have a job and a responsibility to do. So, we could focus kind of on the defensive side because that's kind of our focus here. But what is it that you're doing during these practice situations, and where does your voice come in? Where does your input come in? How are you? I don't know if say used is necessarily the best verb I want to use, but what is your role during practices when it comes to having a voice and having input?
Yeah, no, my I'm used when I'm needed. I do as I'm asked by our head coach, and whenever he needs me, he knows I'm there, and I'll do as he asks. And yeah, wherever he really needs me, whether it's working individual, drilling with guys, doing a little team, getting the scout team ready to go live, for a little 5-on-5, simple things like that. So yeah, wherever the head coach needs me.
So that's not a easy task to do. I mean, to because you got to be ready for kind of any situation, and I think that for you, that must be really beneficial to your coaching career to be like, okay, today I might be doing some one-on-one work. Today I might be getting the scout team ready. Like you got to be ready for all these sort of situations and kind of no matter what gets thrown at you, because I imagine the way that you're going to teach or do some instruction or the way you're going to go about, doing a one-on-one thing with a guy is going to be a lot different than, trying to get 5 people ready to do a scout team situation. It kind of builds your coaching profile, so to speak, in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the fact that when I go to practice every day, I could be doing something new because, when you do the same thing every day, eventually it gets, I don't know if boring, but it can get, boring. Yeah.
Get through yeah, you're kind of going through the routine, so to
Yeah,
speak.
going through the motions. Yeah.
What have you learned, Coach, about defense? How has your level of understanding of the game kind of changed now that you've been on the coaching side? What were things that, as you kind of absorbing all this information from, the great coaches that you're learning from, what were things that really like kind of stuck out to you? They're like, oh wow, I never thought about that, or I never really, considered that or noticed that before. What were some of the gains that you've made in your kind of understanding of the game or understanding of coaching as you've kind of jumped into this profession?
Yeah, no, I've been really lucky to learn from some of the best, whether it be Toby Foster at Elmira, Jeff Lemonselli at Horsettes, or Mike Johnson at Corning, or even, Kevon Shepard from Bishop Kearney up in Rochester. Just really, really top-notch first-class programs and coaches. I've been really fortunate to learn from the best, but, the thing that gets me every day is that my ability to listen every day and learn something because, if you're not learning something new, every day, and, I heard Rick Pitino the other day, however old Rick Pitino is, I think almost 70 years old, right? And
He's still getting after it, though.
Always. Yeah, that guy's a winner. But, yeah, no, I heard Rick Pitino say the other day, if you're not learning when you're coaching, still to that day, it's time for you to find someone else to do. You always got to learn, continue to learn, and you got to listen. You got to hear different perspectives and different point of views, and you got to, be open to new, points of views and different perspectives. So listen and learning, those are two huge things that, I've picked up.
No, that's awesome. No, that's fantastic. Couple more questions, Coach, then I'll get you our concluding segment here. I wanted to ask you, especially because in your unique role as an assistant in particular, what is your role and responsibility in game situations? Does it fluctuate from game to game? Are you asked of different things? So when a game's going on, what is your responsibility? How do you kind of work with guys? What's your role on the bench? Talk about what you're needed for in particular come game situations.
Yeah, no. So my role on the bench is I keep our guys under control during the game, make sure they're not having fun but not screwing off necessarily. Keeping them engaged, keeping them vocal, and involved in the game. Helping players who come off the court, who maybe have some questions. Answering those questions for them, and then on top of that, keeping some statistics on the iPad for us. I do that as well. So at halftime, when we go into halftime, I can present all those statistics to everybody, our statistics and theirs. So we have a shot graph that I keep throughout the game and stuff like that, which is really beneficial to all of us. So I do that. I keep our guys in line, and it's really nice because we have myself on the bench, and we have our two other varsity assistants, and James Harris and Tony Clearwater. So one of them does offense, one of them does defense, and then I kind of just do, being the young guy, the guy at the bottom of the barrel. Coach Foster's coaching them up. I'm the guy, in charge of keeping everybody in line and keeping everybody in sync and in float and keeping them involved. And on top of that, doing statistics and keeping everybody engaged.
I like that. Keep it in line, kind of the general there on the bench, enforcing it, making sure everybody's. Hey, I mean, it's a big role though to make sure everybody's in tune, everyone's body language is right, everyone's focus is right. I've seen it plenty of times where, teams aren't necessarily as engaged on the bench, and then a guy or girl comes in and they're not ready. They've been mentally checked out or tuned out or weren't focused or focused on other things or distracted by other things. Then you get them in a game and it's that they aren't ready for it because they haven't been locked into the game the whole time. And I think it's vital to if you can have a guy on staff or a girl on staff who can just make sure that your players are dialed in, because at any moment that their number could be called.
Yeah, no, it's certainly beneficial, and yeah. No, absolutely. And, you got to, again, the 5 to 5, work as one together. Everybody has a role, whether you're in the game, out of the game, on the bench, on the staff, it doesn't matter. Everybody's working together as one to accomplish the goal for the day.
Love it. Final question, Coach, before we hit our concluding segment. Are you basketball related here as I just think about defense in particular? Are you and your staff able to execute and able to do a lot of transition work out of defense? Are there a lot of things that you go into right away when the shot goes up, box out, rebound? Is transition a big part of what it is that you like to get into right after a rebound? And if so, like what are some principles that you and your staff might have for transition?
Yeah, no, we love to, push it down there and then get in and rebound, but definitely put a body on somebody, right? You got a box.
Yep, got it. Got to stop there. Yeah.
Yeah, got to get a body on someone. That's certainly, top notch and a huge priority in our program is boxing out.
And so from there, there's like automatic signals or automatic actions that you go right into there to work on transition. That's something that you emphasize is get the rebound, move out in transition, and then there's certain things that you go into right in from there.
Yep, pushing it, and again, communicating. Big communicating program, as you can probably tell by now.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a huge emphasis. Yeah. I can tell. Go ahead.
Communication is key, my friend. But yeah, no, simple words is calling box or simple things like that. But you better be putting a body on somebody. All 5 guys. When the shot goes up, you better be putting a body on someone.
Hey, and as you mentioned, Coach, I love that emphasis on communication because there's no guesswork, and I imagine with your program, when the communication isn't there in a game or in a practice situation, I imagine there's some immediate consequence that comes out of it. There's nobody who can necessarily escape without talking or being silent. Something's going to happen if guys aren't talking.
No,
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be on the same page always.
Awesome, Coach. To wrap up, Coach, there's a couple questions that I ask every guest, and so I'll go ahead and get started here with this first one, which is thinking back on your coaching career, and I know you're early in it, but I know you also have things that you can definitely share. But thinking back on your coaching career so far, what is a moment that you went through, a moment that you experienced that you think by sharing our listeners would be able to learn from?
Yeah, no, my, memorable coaching moment would probably say that stands out to me occurred during last season's playoffs. We were facing a tough opponent, and we found ourselves only up by 3 going into the half. Our atmosphere in the locker room was tense. Our players were feeling the weight of the situation, certainly. And instead of focusing solely on our game plan, our head coach, Toby Foster, took a moment to remind our team that the power of resilience and teamwork is, so influential and, important. So we reflected on the challenges that we had to overcome throughout the season. We reinforced the importance of leaning on one another, depending on one another, and each player was encouraged to trust their teammate and to play selflessly, playing for one another, right? So important. So in the second half, our players emerged with a renewed energy and focus. They executed our game plan with precision, and they displayed a resilience which cultivated throughout the entire season ultimately. So after that, we secured our victory in the sectional championships, which that experience reinforced my belief that coaching transcends strategy. It's all about building a strong sense of unity and fostering a belief in one another is what I believe coaching is truly about.
Because in that moment, I imagine just kind of putting myself in that situation, right? There was no real, maybe potentially X's and O's thing that you could have said, or there was nothing necessarily in terms of game plan execution, but it was, as you said, right, reaching into these players and pulling out something that had been established from earlier, right? Being able to draw from something that they had already experienced, culture stuff that you've already built, all that stuff that you kind of build in the beginning of the year, that culture, the teamwork, that persistence, that work ethic. You build all of that so that you can draw on it in that moment when you need to remind your guys about all the work that you did. And like you said, I feel like it's so important to take time to address that when those tense situations happen, because when your guys are or girls are nervous, or it's tense, or it's a high pressure situation, to just be able to remind them of how far they've come as a group and how much work they've put in, and these are the moments that they've been working for. Man, I imagine that must have put them at ease, because they might have forgotten all that work that they put in, or all of that time and effort they put in, and to have them be like refocused in that manner, as you kind of alluded to, must have given a lot of confidence to think, oh yeah, we definitely can do it, and they definitely went out and did do it as well.
Yeah, no, it's in times of adversity, is when you find out your true colors as a team, and as a program. So who's going to step up? Who's willing to tread the water and find a way?
That's fantastic. I love that you shared that. It was movie-esque, Coach, putting the locker room speech that you referenced, sort of thing. But no, that's awesome. Coach, to wrap up, I give every guest kind of what I call this 60-second soapbox. But you're welcome to go over 60 seconds, because I'm not going to time you. But I like to use it as kind of a platform for you to get out like a final message, a closing thought, a final idea, anything that you want to leave the listeners with. And you're welcome to take this in any direction that you wish, basketball or coaching or otherwise. So, Coach, I'm going to go ahead and give you this platform and let you take it from here.
Yeah, no, well, first off, I want to thank, Coach Hernandez. Thanks for having me on tonight. I appreciate, you having me on and working around my schedule. And I know you're super busy. So, to just get me in tonight, I appreciate that dearly. You have a first-class podcast and program here, and I appreciate you getting me on. So thank you to start off. And then what I'd probably leave you with is investing in young athletes extends beyond developing their skills on the court. It's about mentoring them, right? It's about being compassionate leaders and responsible citizens. As coaches, we have a unique opportunity to shape not just players, but also future leaders. We must seize every chance to empower our youth, instilling values of teamwork, resilience, and community service. Success should not be defined by not only by wins and losses, but by the positive impact our athletes have on their lives of others. It's vital for coaches, players, and families to collaborate in creating environments where mentoring thrives. Together, I believe that we can inspire young athletes, right, to become more than just players. building a legacy that enriches our communities, fostering an inclusive and supportive culture. We can ensure that the lessons learned in sports carries over to all aspects of life, ultimately making our communities better for everyone, and that is why I coach. End of the day, right? Making our players, student athletes, better people at the end of the day, because eventually it ends for everybody, right? Playing ends for everybody. Eventually, you're done playing basketball and your days are over. So at the end of the day, can you look in the mirror and say, am I a better person from what I learned in the game of basketball? So it's so important that we make better young men out of, athletes. So that's why I coach.
Awesome. I love that idea of talking about your why, Coach. Appreciate you ended on that. It's a real fun, positive note to end on. Coach Palmer, man, again, thank you so much for kind of sharing a lot about so many different things about defense, 2-3 zone, your role as an assistant, the way that you fit into the overall program and your journey as well. I mean, it's so cool to hear, somebody talk with as much poise and maturity as yourself. Like you said, you called yourself an old soul earlier, but your coaching career is definitely going to be taking off, and it's so cool to have been able to talk to you here at the beginning stages of it. So I wish you all the best. I think it's going to be a great year for you guys. I know that you and your program have a lot of high expectations and are pushing to do great things this year. And so hopefully all goes well. Wish you all the best. And again, Coach, really appreciate you coming on here and talking to us today.
Coach Hernandez, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.